Over the past couple of weeks, we've all been talking about censorship in the video game industry, but it is happening worldwide and it is brutal. But while we are hearing that the Visas and the Mastercards of the world are able to actually control our entertainment, there is now an executive order that is going against debanking that could make a big difference in our fight. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, there is no one-size-fits-all solution to the predicament we find ourselves in. One move isn't going to change the entire landscape when it comes to censorship, but any help is still good and it does still deserve to be talked about. Now, of course, I've been talking a lot on the channel about Visa and Mastercard, but if you don't know, storefronts like Steam and Itchio delisted adult games and made them harder to find, and it seemed that the culprits were Visa and Mastercard. Both platforms said that their decision to pull or de-index certain games was motivated by the fear of losing access to the major payment infrastructures that their storefronts rely on. Itchio went one step further and stated that the responsible party was an activist group known as Collective Shout, which has spent years waging campaigns against games depicting violence against women. Collective Shout later confirmed that it had influenced actions taken by Valve and Itch.io after writing an open letter to Visa and Mastercard, but that it did not necessarily ask Itch to de-index all NSFW games. Now, they are, of course, using the wording that, oh, they're trying to protect women and they're trying to protect the kids, when really they're not trying to protect anything except their bottom line. They're trying to profit and gain power and control over this industry. And they had fought to attack video games and really get the gaming landscape changed back during Gamergate 1, and they completely and utterly failed, but they're trying it again. Now they see an opportunity, and I don't think that Collective Shout really influenced credit card companies. I believe that this was their plan all along. I guess we don't technically know, but we do know that games were removed, and Collective Shout was one of the responsible parties, one of the factors in this censorship. But we now are actually hearing about this executive order. I had made a couple of posts on it on X. For some reason, I couldn't put the official White House link in my original post, which is mighty suspicious, but this executive order came down today and it clearly states banking services can't be denied because of protections provided by the Constitution of the United States. It mentions companies have 180 days to remove any provisions from their terms of service that mention reputational damage to themselves due to the fact that they must provide all lawful citizens with banking services. Keep in mind that companies like Visa and Mastercard do have it outlined in their terms of service that they can force you to remove any content that they demand that could be damaging to their brand or risk their reputation. So it's a very similar wording, and companies like Visa and Mastercard can no longer deny payment for something that in their opinion lacks artistic value but is legal in the United States of America, which Valve had pointed to their rule that outlines that sales of products or services that are patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value or any other material that the corporation deems unacceptable to sell in connection with a mark are a violation of this rule. So while this executive order was released primarily because of political censorship, we are talking about there being a slew of reasons why this is positive. I mean, creators like me could have previously been targeted, but I'm not going to read this entire thing, though I am going to read the basics of it. Financial institutions have engaged in unacceptable practices to restrict law-abiding individuals and businesses' access to financial services on the basis of political or religious beliefs or lawful business activities. Platforms like Steam and Itch.io are selling legal content. Therefore, they shouldn't have their ability to sell that content ripped away from them or threatened for it to be ripped away from them. Some financial institutions participated in government-directed surveillance programs targeting persons participating in activities and causes commonly associated with conservatism and the political right following the events that occurred or near the Capitol talks about that a little bit more, but it says as a result, individuals, their businesses, and their families have been subjected to debanking on the basis of their political affiliations, religious beliefs, or lawful business activities and have suffered frozen payrolls, debt, and crushing interest and other significant harms to their livelihoods, reputations, and financial well-being. So it says that it is the policy of the United States that no American should be denied access to financial services because of their constitutionally or statutorily protected beliefs, affiliations, or political views, and to ensure that politicized or unlawful debanking is not used as a tool to inhibit such beliefs, affiliations, or political views. Banking decisions must instead be made on the basis of individualized, objective, and risk-based analysis. The term politicized or unlawful debanking refers to an act by a bank, savings association, credit union, or other financial services provider to directly or indirectly adversely restrict access to or adversely modify the conditions of accounts, loans, or other banking products or financial services of any customer or potential customer on the basis of the customer's or potential customer's political or religious beliefs or on the basis of their lawful business activities. So, one of the major sections, actually, that I think is so very important is that removing reputational risk and politicized or unlawful debanking within 180 days of the date of this order, so August 7th, each appropriate federal banking regulator shall, to the greatest extent permitted by law, remove the use of reputation risk or equivalent concepts that could result in politicized or unlawful debanking, as well as any other considerations that could be used to engage in such debanking from their guidance documents, manuals, and other materials, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, I'm not going to read this entire thing because it is very long and I think that you get the gist of it, but it doesn't specify payment processors, though it does say banking and financial services, and you'd think that that would cover processors. It might come down to the point where it doesn't specify someone has to sue, but this seems to give people the grounds to do so. And while Visa and Mastercard are just payment processors, now there's a big wall they'd face if they demand things can't be purchased with their cards, because Mastercard can't tell a bank that they can't process payments for games on Steam or something like OnlyFans. They have to now. Or for a political figure that's been banned from basically every bank, they can't do that now. If a bank refuses to process someone's payment and they say Mastercard has a terms of service, well, regardless of that, you have to process it. I don't know the difference of how they are treated versus banks. I don't know the exact regulations they have to follow that banks, do have to follow or vice versa, but I believe a lot of what applies to banks does also apply to processors as well. Maybe not everything, but a heck of a lot. And also remember, this is just an executive order and it needs to be passed as legislation through Congress to stay in. Its purpose was primarily to protect gun rights and right-wing politicians and commentators first, but it could also result in hopefully protecting anyone's right to banking services, no matter what they are doing, as long as it is lawful, which could be phenomenal for gamers. And I did post about this over on social media. I know a lot of people are also sharing it. I highly recommend you do as well. Get as many eyes on it as possible. But people are also discussing how it does matter even to those outside of the United States. It specifically impacts banks and payment processors by a broad definition of what is politicized or unlawful debanking, giving affected clients and authorities grounds for legal action. This could be, just really good overall. Even gaming aside, right? For a creator like me, for example, I could be censored based on my discussions about this topic and how much I've been covering it. Visa and Mastercard could rip away your ability to press the super thanks button or super chats and live streams. And now I have one more layer of protection like so many other creators do. So many political creators or just conservatives in general. Now, I did post about how it was insane that I couldn't put the White House link in the original post. I haven't tried it again since to make another post about it, but yeah, that was really suspicious. And a lot of people are saying things like, I can't think of anything more damaging to the reputation of a payment processor than a payment processor deciding what I can and can't do with my own money. Yep. And of course, Valve and Itchio, they still do not have to sell this content. For years, I've talked about how Valve has censored certain developers and removed certain content from their platform, so they could just go back to doing that, but at least we would know that there is a protection in place and it is on their end. They can no longer blame the Visas and Mastercards if they do end up censoring certain content. Love him or hate him, this is a massive freaking W. JP Morgan is the true enemy here. They hold the money. It sounds like we've won, but I'll wait until we hear more. Yeah, I would not say that this is like a total sweeping success and that this is the only win that we needed. I think it's one piece of the puzzle, though, and it is a very large and important piece. Wow, I didn't put it together when I first heard about this executive order, but I believe your interpretation and analysis is correct. This is awesome news. Damn, it feels good. In other words, no more censorship for globalists being enforced by the bankers on American soil. Excellent news. 180 days is too long for banks to get their terms in order. That's what you give government institutions. They should have been given 30 days to get their shit together. I do agree, but at the same time, I still think what stands in this executive order is extremely important. And like, I'm not going to sit here and nitpick over a couple more days. I think that it's good that we got this in general. So I will, of course, be keeping my eye on the situation, and I'm sure covering it more in the future. But right now, creators can't have funding sources ripped away from them over political opinions deemed damaging, and it seems that companies like Visa and Mastercard can no longer deny payments for something that, in their opinion, is offensive or lacks artistic value, and they cannot use the excuse that it's because of reputational risk. And as long as something is lawful, you have to allow people to buy it. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.